what the circumstances. And you know, I've had a lot of help along the way, and I've damn sure needed it too. All the way, I had to. The other day, the newspaper sent somebody over to interview me and take my picture. So they had me stand up against the wall and all these different poses, and then he left, and I sat down, and my fly was unzipped the whole time. And I thought, boy, that ain't an old man deal. Congratulations to Richard and Sharice. That is, you deserve it very much. Well, I guess, you know, the importance of trying cases is to kind of, the ones that I have not done as well about, and those are the ones I think of every morning, you know. But if you kind of let the case come to you, and the way you win criminal trials is you take advantage of mistakes they make, or things develop in the evidence that you're able to take advantage of. And when you know what those are, kind of the older you get, the more you spot them kind of coming. And some of them, a lot of them you can't even think of before a trial. It's what my friend Merle Guile calls good lightning. And it happens. And I don't know why it always happens to me. But you know, I've tried well over 100 jury cases. And my wife Julie's been there at least with me, at least 30 of them, in all different places. She's always given me an honest critique of whatever's happened on that particular day. She's been a big help. And it's been an honor to practice with my son. You know, I had an alcohol problem. I guess I'd been out of treatment about 30 days or something. And Billy and I went and tried a case in federal court that they said we couldn't win. We had to enter a plea. I think the jury was out about an hour. Not guilty. So, and then I think we won about 6 out of 7 trials in the next 10 months or so. So, you know, when the hell that was 10 years ago. And I've got a lot of blessings. I'm sorry not to be more composed, but I guess the people who said so many nice things about me, hell, I thought I died when I was able to read the letters. But you know, I wanna thank everyone in this room. Thank you, Ziva, for being a champion for the truth. And really, the truth is what sets us free. And if you just talk to a jury about the truth, wow. So I'm very honored so many of my friends are here. You know, I look around and I see, I know almost everybody in the room. And the ones I don't, I want to meet. But, you know, I remember so many of you that I was there in some of your first trials. So many people here have helped me, and David and Scott, Billy and Merle, and I have had so many battles. And Bob Wyatt, and Garvin Gall, you guys have been such a great support to me and my friends who came all the way from Oklahoma City today just to watch this. They don't have any business with a bar. I mean, they got another kind of bar, but not that one. But Gary Pearson and Robert Blair and Eddie Wells came from Oklahoma City, and the Dean of OCU Law is here. I love you, Valerie. You've been a great deal for all our city, really, in Oklahoma City. And You know, I got a lot of people to thank, but y'all don't want to hear me just kind of moan on. But like I said, I got my eulogy early, and I'm very honored by this award. And you know, the other day I went down to Chickasha in Grady County, where the Attorney General was charged a 77-year-old man with conspiracy, a guy that all his life done the right thing. So we'll probably have a trial this spring, and so I hope that I can be like Lord Erskine. I mean, that guy was really badass. So, I mean, I don't think I can do quite as good as he did. But, I mean, he made like 7-hour speeches and stuff. But I'll be sticking up for that guy. And I look forward to it. I love you.
All right, the next item on our agenda is one of the great privileges you have as president of the OCDLA. Despite the incredibly important sounding title when you call someone up and say, yes, I'm Michael Haggerty, I'm president of the Oklahoma Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, and you managed to get that out without getting your tongue twisted, which I just did, and I'm very, very proud of. It sounds remarkably important. To be honest, it's an honor to serve in that capacity, and there are some perks that come with it. One of the things you're allowed to do is that in a year like this one, where you have a couple of very qualified candidates for an award, and one person wins and one person does not, then you're able to go ahead and recognize the other people who deserved it, but were, for whatever reason, in the wrong year. We do that through what we call the President's Awards. And I'm going to give out a couple of them at this point for a particular piece of litigation. And I'm going to recognize Sheena Burgess and Beverly Atterbury. Sheena and Beverly are being recognized for their efforts on behalf of the defendant in State v. Brady, CF 12-1801, District Court of Tulsa County. Mr. Brady was charged with 2 counts of rape 1. The Honorable, and I use that word very advisedly, Kirk Glasgow, hearing about the plea negotiations, made the promise to the defense counsel that if the defendant pled blind, he'd get no more than 25. Might even do better, but he'd get no worse than 25 years. Well, Judge Glasgow was running for re-election. It's a tough deal. I had my first experience with the electorate this year, and I don't particularly care for it. And Judge Glasgow felt like he needed to help himself out, and so he handed Mr. Brady a nice 40-year sentence, which promptly went on his Facebook page for his campaign. I'm sure that was a total coincidence that those two things happened. Mr. Brady wanted to withdraw his plea. Judge Glasgow appointed an attorney for him, who convinced Mr. Brady, who had an IQ in the mid-60s, that he didn't want to withdraw his plea. And at this point, the Tulsa Public Defender's Office asked for help. And Sheena and Beverly took the case on pro bono. They disqualified Judge Glasgow, who didn't really think he ought to turn loose of the case. Couldn't see why he had a conflict. Quite the mystery. They managed to undo the previous withdrawal of the motion to withdraw the plea by proving ineffective assistance of counsel. And they also proved that the plea was involuntary because Judge Glasgow had made a promise that he did not fulfill. A promise that he lied under oath at the hearing and denied had not been made, contradicting both the defense attorneys as well as the prosecutor. Folks, the reason I'm giving this award out is because this particular type of litigation goes to the core of what we are here for. Folks, if there's one thing we stand for here, it's the rule of law. You don't play this sort of game no matter how bad you want to win your dadgum election, no matter how bad someone may need to be punished. You play the game honestly, you play the game by the rules, and you see what happens when you get done. These two lawyers took this case on, and they made sure that whatever happens with Mr. Brady, whose case is still pending, right?
Yes.
And whose case they are still handling pro bono,
Pro bono.
and will handle through trial pro bono. Whatever happens to him is going to be whatever is dictated by the law, by the evidence, and by the Constitution of this great country. In order to do that, they had to take directly on a sitting district judge. I don't know Judge Glasgow. Lord willing, I'll never have to meet him, because I practice 3.5 hours away. But I've read the record in this case. I don't need to know anything else, folks. To take on a sitting district judge, who you may very well have to practice in front of again, to accuse and prove that that man is lying under oath in order to cover his ass, I hope that if I'm ever faced with that situation down in my little corner of the world, that I will have the courage to act as these two ladies have done in defense of their client. And it is because of their exemplary actions in this matter that I am awarding Sheena Burgess and Beverly Atterbury a President's Award for their conduct in the Brady case.
Thank you. I want to thank Sheena, but also Brian Rail, who reached out to the defense bar and said, hey, this really disgusts me, what happened with my client, And I called Brian, said, I was actually on vacation. I said, you need any help? Let me know. And about a week later, I hear from Sheena, and she's like, would you like to serve a subpoena for me? And I said, on who? And she said, Judge Glasgow. And I said, sure, no problem. So, yes, and but that case is still ongoing, and Mr. Brady has a 66 IQ. And for those of everybody who practices death penalty in this room knows that we have a magical number of 70 that cuts things off in this country. Not only for death penalty work, but also in regards to competency and things like that. And it's in the pre-sentence report that Judge Glasgow had when he did the sentencing originally, showing the IQ of this young man from the time he was a small child. And his decision in that case was based purely on politics. And I thank the OCDLA and their current president for this award and for thinking of us, and also for the work for Mr. Brady, because his family is, they're truly, this is much of a crime towards them because of the type of the type of life that their son has not only had to live up to this point in time because of the circumstances of his birth, but also because of the way, unfortunately, the system that was supposed to help him did not. And I thank all of you.
I really appreciate. I called Beverly and said, I got to subpoena a judge and a lawyer. They're not going to let me within 50 feet of them. Can you help? And she was like, sure. Who do you want me to serve? She didn't ask who. I asked her to jump on this case, and she didn't even ask, what do you need me to do? I said, I need help, and she said, yes. And the thing is, I'm in a firm. If I piss off a judge, I send another lawyer. And we have cases in front of Glasgow. I'm not allowed on that floor right now from my firm who does civil. But Beverly's the sole practitioner. And you know what? She didn't even second guess. And that's what we're supposed to do as criminal defense lawyers. We're supposed to say yes. And we're supposed to stand up. And we're supposed to fight. And just like Richard and Sharice, we started out in the public defender's office. And Pete was my first boss, and he was supposed to be here today, but his knee's hurting. Hip's fine, but he just had surgery, but the knee's hurting. But that's where you learn that you fight, just like Richard and Sharice and Mr. Coyle, who I've had the pleasure of at least meeting with on one of his cases one time before. But I thank all of you here. This does mean a lot. We're not done.
No.
We are gearing up for the battle of competency like you've never seen before. I will say this, I don't know if it was because of Richard and Sharice, but Tim Harris actually gave us a witness on our case. We were at the end of the hearing, it was an 8-hour hearing, and he came forward and said, one of my assistant DAs can actually testify on your behalf. And I'm presenting him to you, and brought him back to the judge's chambers, and he was our last witness. Because before, when I had interviewed him, he kind of hem-hawed around and blah, blah, blah. And Tim said, here, put him on the stand, this is what he's going to testify to. So thank you. Because Tim turned over a witness I didn't even know about. Which was shocking, because when he walked in the judge's room, Beverly and I both put our head down like, oh crap, what are you doing here? Can you leave? This is not your battle. But luckily, that was one of the nice things. Thank you, Michael. Thank you to OCDLA Board of Directors. I know how hard y'all work during the year. I know because you make me come to the meetings sometimes, even when I'm no longer on the board.
We can hear that.
No. Thank you very much.
There is one more person that I want to recognize before we move on to the business part of the meeting. One of the things we've talked about here today is the rule of law. And it is at the core of the Anglo-American justice system. It's what we inherited from the British. It's what we have worked so hard to strengthen, to encourage. It's a big part of what we are committed to as a profession. Not everybody has that privilege. And we learned about some of that over the summer and this fall. The story behind this award bears a little bit of telling. Late this summer or midsummer, first vice president of the OCDLA, Bob Wyatt, was contacted by Judge Stephen Friett from Western District. And Judge Friett has been working for years as part of the Open World program. That's a program that you may not have heard of. I didn't hear of it before we started this. Established by Congress in '99, where we basically do an exchange program with other nations. It started between us and Russia, largely because I suspect that we and what was the former Soviet Union had been at odds with each other so much that we viewed each other as weird and strange animals in a zoo. So, one of the things that they focus on in there is having people examine the rule of law. Well, Judge Friot he's been working very hard with that. He's been over to Russia many times. He's had people over here. The group that he was having over in October was 3 law professors and 3 actual criminal defense attorneys from a city now known as Nizhny Novgorod, and I give absolutely no rebates on that pronunciation. It used to be called Gorky, which was nice and simple and easy to remember. One of the largest cities in the Russian Republic. And those folks were coming over to basically tour various places in the United States and learn about the rule of law. One of the things they were looking at was jury trials. Jury trials are a new thing in Russia. Historically, the Russians had a jury of 1, and he came with a loaded 9mm that he applied to the back of your head. They're trying to do things a little bit differently. Things are different there, and they're different for our colleagues in the criminal defense bar. What Judge Friot wanted, I've botched that name up a million times. Fortunately, I don't have to practice in front of him either. So, what he wanted is he wanted us to host a reception. That doesn't seem like a big deal. We have receptions all the time. We've had receptions all week here. But he wanted us to host a reception. I think the best explanation of why I can quote from his letter thanking us for the reception that we were able to host. The OCDLA reception made a deep and lasting impression on our Russian colleagues. In Russia, the very idea that an organization of criminal defense lawyers would be allowed to host a reception in a federal courthouse would be beyond imagining. Our Russian guests sensed great camaraderie, true professionalism, and a deep commitment to the rule of law. I was proud to present you and your fellow OCDLA members as representatives of an indispensable segment of our profession. Because you and I do not live in Russia, you and I will never fully understand all of the reasons that this reception made a deep and favorable impression on our guests. Nevertheless, I can safely say that the OCDLA reception and the impressions gained from it by our Russian colleagues contributed as much as any other activities during that week to our Russian guests' understanding of our system and of the importance we attach to the rule of law. It is unthinkable in Russia for criminal defense attorneys to be recognized as equal members of the bar, much less to host a reception in a federal courthouse, which we did a couple weeks ago in October. The reason I'm recognizing Bob White for his work in this is because Bob took this and ran with it. This is something that probably I should have handled more than anybody, but as I noted, I was busy with the electorate and quite frankly didn't have time to fool with it. Bob took it. He made all the arrangements. He made sure we invited people that were necessary. He made sure that we had the catering taken care of. He made all the arrangements. I walked in an hour before we were ready to start, ready to see if there was anything that I could take care of, and it was all done. I stood around and looked around. Felt kind of useless. It's kind of wonderful to feel kind of useless over something like that. That letter that I quoted from was a letter that Judge Friot sent to Bob personally. And Bob shared with us, with the board of directors, and I've shared it with y'all. And the reason I've done that is because we all owe Bob a debt of gratitude for the tremendous work that he did, putting all of that together and hopefully helping our Russian colleagues learn that there is a different way of doing things than the way that they have done things over there historically, and perhaps helping establish the rule of law in that nation. So at this point, Bob, if you'll come on up here, we've got a little something for you.
It's been an honor and a privilege to be a member of this organization since 1998. I think I've served on the board since maybe 2002, something like that. It's a difficult job that we all do every day. I look around and I see people from Tulsa that I know by